Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show, as always, with my co-host, David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. And as always, I thank you, Robert. Ooh, the frog's going off. And I greet you all with the love and the honor of the infinite creator, as always. And of course, we always hope that you're doing as best as possible in these times of chaos. And maybe we can bring a little something. We got two stories for you tonight to kind of give away a secret. But I don't know what Robert's going to talk about tonight. So it's new on me too.
Well, and as
what you got
always,
for us, Robert?
As always, I don't disappoint. We're going to talk about the Mohawks. Now we talk about Brant and some of these other guys before the Iroquois tribes and things like that. But as I was scrolling through one of my books, as always, I come across something really cool. And that was they were talking about the Mohawks and, and how they were persecuted or whatever by other tribes, or other tribes persecuted them, or either way, it doesn't matter. Tribes persecuted other tribes. And we always think, I guess, in our heads that, well, the Indians were always about, fighting with the white man. It wasn't necessarily that. Okay. It was, I used to cut a mohawk every summer. There you go. Anyway, thank you everybody for coming. We got Scotty Boy, Chloe, Susie Q, a whole bunch of people in the chat, and Scotty Boy had a mohawk. Huh? Yeah. How about that? Not the Indian type. He had but anyhow, the thing is that the Indians weren't fighting the white man all the time. Way back in the day, or even in the day, they were fighting amongst themselves. And it wasn't pretty either. And I come across this chapter in this book, and this book is the Jesuit book. I was going to say to
Catholics.
Yeah, it's an account of North America by the Jesuits. It's Jesuits in North America. It was written, I'm trying to find a date on here, 1892. Well, so like I said, this was wrote way back in the day, and it's their accounts from, as you know, religions always keep really good track of everything that they want to and nothing of they don't want to.
And of course, it's usually slanted a particular way.
Yes, it is. And this here is basically, it says 1646 to 1647. So we're going to travel back in time tonight to find out about this here, a lady right here.
Okay, Mohawk. Mr. Peabody, let's get in the Wayback Machine.
We're going to the Wayback Machine. And but first, wait a minute. I didn't show you her. I got it up on my screen, but I didn't share the screen. Really good that does you guys, right? Anyway, yeah, we're going to talk about a Mohawk lady. And there's what a Mohawk lady would look like, something like that. Possibly she would be clothed like this. And then the lady that we were going to be talking about, well, she was in I guess this is called a tunic. If I'm wrong, please correct me. And of course, this one's carrying a thing with a baby in it, and they had their own, a papoose, yes. And you can see she's got a little handle on here. Maybe she could strap that on her back. It's on a board. They didn't need these $1,000 baby carriages or plastic crap. They just had a board. And then they put you in some swaddling clothes, and there you go. And them kids grew up just fine.
And a lot of times, that the elders were the babysitters, and also if the tribe had dogs, the dogs were also the keepers of the children.
Yes, and they had a lot of dogs too.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Mohawks, so you get the gist of it all. The Mohawk Indians were once the most easterly tribe of the 5 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy. Now you got to remember, they're in this confederacy, but they're going to be fighting amongst themselves. So, and their original homeland was the valley of the Mohawk River in upstate New York, west of the Hudson River, and extending into southern Canada and Vermont, primarily around Lake Ontario in the St. Lawrence River. It also extended south to New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So they had quite the area, basically New York area. As part of the Iroquoian Confederacy, the fierce warlike Mohawk were known as the keepers of the Eastern Door, the traditional guardians against invasions from the east. The Mohawk tribe lived in a very fortified villages of longhouses. We've talked about longhouses. We'll show you a picture in a second. In the winter and in the summer, and the men traveled on hunting expeditions while living in temporary wigwams. We've seen those before. They're just brushed, throw it on top and over some bent poles, and voila, throw some leaves over the top and you get yourself a wigwam. The Mohawk tribe lived, they travel and hunt. The people practice hunting, fishing, farming, and travel extensively in the territory along the rivers in elm bark canoes for trading and war expeditions. Now, remember, elm bark canoes, that's really important when it comes to this story we're going to be talking about. Because of the warlike nature of the Mohawks, were feared due to their brutal attacks and ruthless way they treated captives, and we'll find that out in a second. Along with the other tribes of the Iroquois Confederacy, they waged warfare on all of their neighboring tribes until they were all conquered. Their first contact with Eastern European settlers came from conflict fighting against French explorer Samuel de Champlain. In the 17th century, the Mohawk encountered the Dutch, who went up the Hudson River and before long, up the Hudson River, which is present-day Quebec. Before long, the Mohawk regularly traded with the Dutch, Swedish, French, British, and during this time, the Mohawk fought with the Huron in the Beaver Wars to control the fur trade with the Europeans. And here we go. Jesuit missionaries were also active with the tribe, seeking converts to catechism.
Catechism.
Yeah.
Catholicism.
Catholicism. That's the word I'm looking for.
I can't see the word. I'm just guessing.
Yes, Catholicism. The Mohawk allied with the British against the French during the French and Indian War. After the Revolution, the British ceded their claim to the land in the colonies, and the Americans forced their allies, the Mohawks and others, to give up their territories in New York. Most of the Mohawks then migrated to Canada. Sorry, all you people in Canada. I didn't mean that. Anyway.
We love you, Canucks.
That's right. And here's what the woman we're going to be talking about may have looked like, or maybe she had a kid. This will be important. They were big on their tomahawks. When you hear stories of tomahawks, these areas were fierce for it. These were not for chopping wood. They were for killing you. As you can see, they were made out of all kinds of things. We just seen some stone ones. Here's ones made out of bone. I mean, remember, this was in the day before they had metal. And you can see they even left the teeth on this thing. Put it on a stick. That could be a deadly weapon. Look at, they probably sharpened that jawbone. I think this must be a jawbone of some sort because the teeth are in there. and decorate it up a little bit. You can whip somebody with that horsehair. You know, horsehair, man, you hit somebody with some horsehair and it hurts like hell. It stings.
The horsehair is more for decoration. Also, the spirit of the horse, the swiftness. So it would be like, I want this axe to really go swift into somebody's head.
That
But
could be.
anyway, yeah, it's not long enough to have actually hurt someone. Especially if at the end of the axe to where you just killed them.
Yeah.
I'm going to whip you with my whip here of hair. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That could be. Anyway, here's some little more modern ones. There must be a design on the top of this one in the metal, but as you can see, there's a pounder here that'll club you in the skull and kill you dead. And then the axe here, that, this is meant to be done with chopping actions to inflict a lot of damage, not to like chop your arm off or chop your head off, but to inflict tons of damage. And then, of course, here you got another axe type hammer deal. That's a stone. Boy, if that hits you in the head, your skull is going to be crushed.
And that's obviously more for crushing than chopping or whatever. Yes. That's more like a mace.
Yes. Yeah, you hit somebody with that, they'll break your arm. And then you use your chopping axe. Here's a more modern day one. It's got metal. You notice that. I mean, you're not chopping wood with that. You're killing people with that, killing something.
But I gotta add though, when the metal ones, an axe like that, because I've used similar type axes, but they call them hatchets these days, and back in the day, but they will chop wood.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but the back of that axe is meant straight for killing. Okay, there is no other function to it. So, but you can cut wood. You can cut wood with an axe like that.
Yeah, but I mean, it looks pretty lightweight to me. I mean, I could be wrong, but anyway, it looks like
it has a dual purpose. The stone axes, they weren't but for one thing, and that was for killing.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And Scotty Boy says maybe a throwing axe. Yeah, you could.
Oh yes,
throw that really
absolutely.
Easy. Yeah. So like I said, each one of these had its purpose. If we show pictures of the Indians, are usually always carrying one of their axes. Here you can see the states, and you can see where the Indians are. The Mohawk are right here in New York. They're on that eastern edge. And the Pequot, the Mohican, and we know what happened to the Mohican, the last of Mohican. And then, of course, the Algonquin that is in the upper, going up to Canada, which they must have been a weaker tribe, which we're going to be talking about soon. And of course, these are your tribes, the Seneca, which you're going to read a story from tonight, the Cayuga, the Okanaga, the Oneida, and the Mohawk, and Machian.
Can I bring some?
Yeah, go ahead.
Bring something up.
Yeah, go ahead.
The book said that the Iroquois were the easternmost, and if you look at that map, they weren't.
No,
I'm just stating an obvious fact. Okay, the book is wrong. They were not the easternmost.
Well, the Iroquois were these tribes, put together. That was the
Confederacy.
Yes, exactly. So, I don't know exactly which one. How I know this is like, I should look this up and then we could find it out. But let's see, map of the Iroquois. Hang on.
I'm gonna get that's all right. My point to this is that it says that the Iroquois Confederacy, but they don't tell you that unless you looked at the map, that there were all these other tribes within the Confederacy. That's what I'm trying to point out. It
Yeah.
wasn't just the Iroquois nation, it was all of these other Indian tribes that made up the Confederacy. I
Yeah.
wanted to, and thank you for the map because it's what in the early on in that is it's misleading. Well, it's only the Iroquois. What? Wait a minute. Hang on.
Okay.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm trying to find the Iroquois Confederacy. Yeah. Okay, here's a map. I don't know if I can make that. Okay, there we go. I found it. So here is the Confederacy right here. And you're right. These are the ones that are in the Confederacy. The Seneca, the Cayuga, the Okanaga, the Oneida, the Mohawk right here. And I can't really blow this up because I didn't copy it. So here's another. You're right. This is and this is kind of the area, the Iroquois area. So yeah. Yeah, they kind of just cover that New York, Pennsylvania area. And then of course, the rest of the tribes were all surrounding them.
So when it says the Iroquois Confederacy, there was, well, it would have been like the Confederate States, during the Civil War. It was Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama, it wasn't just, that's what made up the Confederacy. But anyway, okay, I'll shut up now. Keep going.
Yeah, but if you get back to this map, okay, so they are surrounded by all these other Indian tribes, basically. They're kind of smack dab in the middle. No wonder why they gathered together. This is what your typical Mohawk Indian would look like. See, he's got his chopping axe, his fighting axe with him. Here's their long houses, like we talked about in the thing. They lived in these long houses. Here's a cutaway view. Bark on the outside. Oh, here's another map.
Let me add that, the birch bark was, we don't have that down here in the South.
Yeah.
So you use different items for, down here in the South with the Seminole use palmettos. But so not every longhouse was made with birch bark. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Elderberry says the Iroquois was also from the east where the Huron were also. Yeah, the Huron were above them. The Huron were up here. They were more towards Canada. Yeah, so the Huron
and
were.
We love our Canadian friends.
Yes. Here's another. I did do a whole bunch of them, didn't I? Okay. These were the Iroquois Confederacy, and these were the Dutch settlements that started out. And here we go. In dedication to the Mohawks, called themselves the Kahnawake people of the place of the flint. The Algonquins called them eaters of men because they ate their enemy to ingest their energy. Flag is issued in USA and Canada on all Mohawk land. Like the Oneida, the Mohawk have only 3 clans: the bear, the wolf, and the turtle. Most Iroquois tribes have 8. These and others, there are Mohawk in New York, Canada, and some in Oklahoma. And there you go.
And they got to Oklahoma because of the Trail of Tears. They moved all Indians west.
Yes.
Not just the Cherokee.
Here, North American Indian, type and face. There you go, Mohawk Indian. That's what you'd see because you remember we're getting set back here in the early 1700s. There's a longhouse. Chloe says she's never seen a longhouse. There you go, Chloe. There's a longhouse. Scotty says, are the Iroquois a Canadian tribe? Yeah, they were kind of right on the border of all of this. Canada. Here's a brave old Hendrick, the great Sachem of chief of the Mohawk Indians. And as you can see that he must have befriended the British. The Indians did like to get the clothes of the white man and dress in them. Remember, we had Red Jacket and several others. They always liked to dress in the white man's clothes. But even though you took the Indian out of the Indian village, you couldn't take the Indian out of the Indian. He's still got his hatchet here,
His tomahawk.
Tomahawk, yeah. And a fancy one at that. It looks like he's gotten into some fights there. You can look at his face.
And wait, go back to, of course, that one shows it too. But go back to the other one. Yeah. It shows him in defiance.
Hey,
he's just not showing off, his favorite toy. He's showing off his favorite tomahawk in defiance.
Yeah.
That picture. Whoever drew that, looks like a lithograph. But that's showing you, all right, come on, buggers. I'll take you on.
Yeah, exactly. As you can see, he must have gotten some fights. Looks like this might be a tattoo, or maybe it's all like tattoos. Scars, tattoos. It looks like the Joker from Batman.
Yeah, it does.
Now
that's the same guy?
Yeah, same guy.
And who is that again, please?
This is Old Hendrick.
Old Hendrick.
Great Sachem or Chief of the Mohawks.
Yeah, but it looks like a scar, and I bet you he had a couple more too.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he did. Male and female Mohawk Indians. And that's their interpretation of them, when they first came. Look, they got tattoos all over their bodies. This here is...
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Reason? There are a lot of similarities to the tattoos and things like that to guess who? African nations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And and they never met maybe a long time ago in Pangea, but there are a lot of African tribes who, tattoos and, different, feathers and a lot of similarities without them being anywhere related. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Even to the point of some African tribes would, eat their, the ones they conquered for their energy. So even that, and also in South America, there are tribes down there that did the same thing. So anyway, it wasn't just the North American Iroquois that did it.
Yep, this is true.
I wonder how they knew. I know this is not related, but I wonder how, the Americas separated by an ocean from Africa, when they actually did things that they did were parallel to each other, like tattooing and things like that. And just,
Yeah, but you got to remember, hey, people are people, right? And just because I'm here and we're going to pick on Chloe, and we'll say Chloe's in Texas, right? And I'm here in North Dakota. If I think of an idea, doesn't mean that because I'm human and I need to make a fire, right? I may find something that works here, and then Chloe's going to find something that works there, and it might be very similar because we all have the same idea of making a fire. You see what I'm saying? Just like, they come up with an idea of tattooing and said, hey, at least I won't lose my stuff. I can't really, I don't have anything else. It seems to be tattooing is a simple process. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's painful. But here's more to my point, and you kind of touched on it, is that I think it's more of in the essence of the creator. And you know me, I believe that, we're all members of the League of Like-Minded Beings. So in the energy of the universe, the folks in Africa could hear, or the folks in the Americas, or vice versa. And so even though they didn't know what was going on, they were getting it out of the universe. So
Well,
they were hearing similar things and doing similar things, because it is the planet-wide nature of things. Does that
yeah,
make sense?
yeah, like building a house. You're living outside, and you say, I got to build a house. And you got 1,000 people. I mean, everybody's going to have an idea, but after you get to that 1,000 person, you're going to look back and you say, well, look we got like 10 houses that are built that are very similar or real close to each other. And I suppose that's kind of how it turns out. I mean, because like here in the States, they had a lot of tattoos, but like in Africa, they made their necks long. They carved out their ears to hang down to their shoulders, kind of thing. They made their lips really big. I mean, all kinds of weird stuff like that.
Well,
too.
which one was the ones, the native folks in the Northeast that wore things in their ears? So, my point is that similar tribes heard different things from from the universe. And like some tribes in Africa did their ears where other tribes didn't. You know what I mean? So I think it just like you were talking about, there are people who have similar ideas at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's been recorded. So I'm suggesting that the natives heard in their ceremonies and so forth different things. Maybe it was the shaman or the chief or whatever. But isn't it interesting though that tribes in Africa just did?
Well, yeah.
That's
Well,
all.
the thing is,
I think they heard it.
Well, the thing
I
is,
think
too,
they heard it from the universe.
Well, I agree with that. I'm just, but there's the thing too, is like things catch on. So we know that they had shells and from the ocean in the Dakotas, and they had stones from the Dakotas in Florida. And as things move around, after hundreds of years, I'm sure ideas, hey, that's the new and upcoming thing, is putting things in your ear, and it passed on real quick. You know what I mean? Because you didn't want to be left out either.
But I mean, but thinking that that's what went on in the Americas, in the middle of the United States and in Oklahoma, versus what happened in the middle of Africa, similar things, but divided by an ocean.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
You couldn't trade that. Not back then.
It's that 100 monkey syndrome,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I just find it interesting that similar things were developed an ocean away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, even in Europe, they were doing things that they kind of did in South America, only, they didn't have the same amount of tools or what, they had the same thing, just in a different way because they didn't have the same material.
Yep.
So anyhow, we got how to pronounce the word Mohawk. What does it mean? Mohawk is pronounced Mohawk. It comes from their Algonquin enemies used to call them meat eater or man eaters in their own language. The people call themselves Kinekehaka, which means people of the flint. Were they really man eaters? It is not clear anymore whether the name was supposed to be literal or just an insult or just a figure of speech to show that the Mohawks were fierce. Some Mohawk people believe that in ancient times, before they joined the Iroquois Confederacy, their ancestors used to eat enemies they killed in battle. Other Mohawks think that it never really happened and cannibals were always rare and strange in Mohawk society like they were in other cultures. Where do Mohawks live? The Mohawks are original people in New York State. We already showed you the maps. The Mohawk people still live in New York today, but most Mohawks retreated to Canada in the 16 and 1700s. Okay, so.
Oh, so they moved early out of the States.
Yes, and
They
I don't think
migrated early. They were smart.
Yeah.
They got out early. They didn't want to go to Oklahoma. I'm sorry.
No, they didn't. I'm going to skip over this. This is pretty much.
Shame on me.
Why? Oh, okay. Anyway, okay. I think I got all of that. I think that's our last one. Okay. Anyway, now comes the story. So I was tooling through this book, Cats in the House. Look at that, Cats in the House. And this is from the 1700s, and it talks about the peace was broken and the hounds of war turned loose. The contagion spread through all the Mohawk Nation, and war songs were sung. The miserable colonists and their more miserable allies woke from their dream of peace and reality of fear of horror. And this is the horror part. And I'm going to skip over some of this. It was on Ash Wednesday. The French at Three Rivers were at mass in a chapel when the Iroquois, quietly approaching, plundered 2 houses close by. And then it goes on, they were raiding and on the warpath. 2 Indians of the same nation whom they captured basically sled on the trail, and they took up chase. This is where it gets really bad, people. This is going to be a gory one. Basically, they set on the trail, and they took up the chase like the hounds of the scent of game, wrapped in furs or blanket coats. Remember, this is wintertime, people. Some with gun in hand, some with bows and arrows and quivers, and others with hatchets, war clubs, which we already pointed out, knives or swords, striding on snowshoes and bodies half bent through the gray forests and the frozen pine swamps, among wet black trunks, along dark ravines and under savage hillsides, their small fierce eyes darting quick glances and pierce the farthest reaches of naked woods. The hunters of men followed the track of their human prey. At length, they decried the bark of the wigwams of the Algonquin. This is an Algonquin camp. The warriors were absent. None were here but women and children. The Iroquois surrounded the huts and captured all the shrieking inmates. Then 10 of them set out. Remember, this is between 1646 and 1647. They set out to find the traces of the absent hunters. They soon met the renowned Pescaret, returning alone. He was a famous Indian chief. As they recognized him and knew his mettle, they thought treachery better than the open attack. They therefore approached him in an attitude of friends. Remember, they were under treaty, and the treaty was broken. While he, ignorant of the rupture of the treaty, began to sing his peace song. Scarcely had they joined him when one of them ran a sword through his body, and having scalped him, they returned in triumph to their companions. All the hunters were soon after waylaid, overpowered by numbers, and killed or taken prisoner. That's all those hunters. Another band of the Mohawks had meanwhile pursued another party of Algonquins and overtaken them on a march as they encumbered in their sledges and baggage, and they were moving from one hunting camp to another. Though taken by surprise, they made fight and killed several of their assailants. But in a few moments, their resistance was overcome, and those who survived the fray were helpless in the clutches that enraged the victors. They began to massacre of the old, the disabled, and the infants. People, beware of this. When war breaks out, that's what happens. And with the usual beating, gashing, and severing of the fingers to the rest, The next day, the two bands of Mohawks, each with its troop of captives, fast bound, met at an appointed spot on the lake of St. Peter and greeted each other with yells of exultation, and which mingled a wail of anguish, and the prisoners of either party recognized their companions in misery. They all kneeled in the midst of their savage conquerors, and one of the men, a noted convert, meaning Christianity, after a few words of exhortation, repeated in a loud voice a prayer, to which the rest responded. They sang an Algonquin hymn, while the Iroquois, who at first had stared in wonder, broke into laughter and desertion, and at a length fell upon them with renewed fury. One was burned alive on the spot. You'll get this a lot. It seems they like to burn each other. Another tried to escape, and they burned the soles of his feet, and that he might not repeat that attempt. Many others were maimed and mangled, and some of the women who afterwards escaped affirmed that in ridicule of the converts, they crucified a small child by nailing it with wooden spikes against a thick sheet of bark. They were cruel people. They were cruel. No wonder why they called them man-eaters. The prisoners were led to the Mohawk towns, and it is needless to repeat the monstrous and revolting tale of torture and death. The men, as usual, were burned, but the lives of the women and children were spared in order to strengthen the conquerors by their adoption. Not, however, until both, but especially the women, had been made to endure the extremes of suffering and indignity. Several of them, from time to time, escaped, and each reached Canada with the story of their woes. Among these was Marie. This is a story of Marie, really.
Now wait. Now that's the is that the picture that you showed?
I don't know. It's from the 1600s. I just said that's what
Okay.
the baby looked like.
You showed that picture of that woman earlier, and I'm
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah, so Marie was one of the Algonquins that they captured, and she was taken to the Mohawks, and this was telling how violent these people were. They captured the Algonquins, and they killed all the old men, the disabled, anybody, the children, making fun of them along the way. They started to pray because they were converted to Christianity, and then they just laughed like, look at you, we're going to chop you to pieces anyway. And then
can I add something about the old and the decrepit?
Yes, go ahead.
Some felt it was easier to kill them because they weren't of their tribe, because they would have had to feed them.
Well, that, and what are you going to do?
They would have been responsible for them. I mean, also they were, they just like to hack them up too. But also, it's like, I ain't feeding this old person. Screw that. They ain't no relation to me. Heck, one less mouth to feed. Now that's just part of it.
Well, the thing is if you're, and this goes with any war, you don't want to take in, young men, old men who tell tales, or stir, are wise, or say, hey, I've been an Algonquin my whole entire life. I don't hold loyalty to you. Right. I mean, you're going to be like, he's not one of us, but the children, we can adopt them in, and in 5 or 6 years, they're indoctrinated. They don't even know who they are.
Right.
And the women, they can't fight back. They're women. It's like, we'll torture them a while, we'll brainwash them, and they'll make good workers. And
also, if they would surely would have mated with them, and it would also, even though they would have been half blood, they would have still strengthened the tribe, You know,
Mhm.
my son, a famous chief. He might have been a bastard son in that it was an Algonquin wife or concubine. It would still be a strong man. He would still be seen as a leader within the tribe, even though
Mhm.
his mama was, a different tribe.
This is
So
true. This is true. Okay, so several. Where was I? Because it says you're right. It says children are spared in order to strengthen the conquerors by their adoption. Not, however, until both, but especially the women, had been made to endure the extremities of suffering. Now, women, if you're listening to this is suffering. I mean, how many women nowadays would go through some of this without going totally bonkers and live another day? But it gets better. Listen to this. Several of them from time to time escaped and reached Canada with the story of their woes. Among these was Marie, the wife of Janine Baptiste, one of the principal Algonquin converts, captured and burned with the rest. Early in June, she appeared in a canoe at Montreal, where Madame Alabouste, to whom she was well known, received her with great kindness and led her to a room in the fort. Here, Marie was overcome with emotion. Now is where she tells her story, because Marie was one of those people who escaped. She was overcome with emotion. Madame Alabouste spoke Algonquin with ease, and with her words of sympathy, joined with the associations of the place where the unhappy fugitive, with her murdered husband and child, had often found a friendly welcome, so wrought upon her that her voice was smothered with sobs. She had once before been a prisoner of the Iroquois at a town in Ogananga, where she and her companions in misfortune had reached the Mohawk towns. She was recognized by several Onangas who chanced to be there, and who, partly by threats and partly by promises, induced her to return with them to the scene of her former captivity, where they assured her of good treatment. With their aid, she escaped from the Mohawks and set out with them from Onanga. On their way, they passed the great town of the Oneidas, and her conductors, fearing that the certain Mohawks who were there would lay claim to her, found a hiding place for her in the forest, where they gave her food and told her to wait until their return. She lay concealed all day and all night, approached the town under the cover of darkness. A dull, red glare of flames rose above the jagged tops of the palisade that encompassed it, and from the pandemonium within, an uproar of screams and yells and bursts of laughter told her that they were burning one of her captive countrymen. She glazed and listened, shivering with cold and aghast with horror. The thought proceeded her that she would soon share his fate, and she resolved to fly. I mean, she's going to run. The ground was still covered with snow, and her footprints would fall infallibly and have betrayed her. So basically, her footprints are going to give her away, and they're going to find her in the snow. If she had not, instead of turning towards home, followed the beaten Indian path westward, she journeyed on, confused and irresolute, and tortured between terror and hunger. At length, she approached Ogananga, a few miles from the present city of Syracuse, that's New York, and hid herself in a dense thicket of spruce or cedar, whence she crept forth at night to grope in the half melted snow for a few ears of corn left from last year's harvest. Can you imagine corn left laying on the ground? It's winter, and you're grabbing to gnaw off some kernels. Now, that's talking you're hungry. I tell you, most people
And
nowadays,
desperate.
yeah, most people nowadays, they would not even bother. I mean, if you got a little brown spot on some lettuce, they'll toss the whole dang salad, you
Yep.
know? Oh my gosh. And here this
They're
lady's eating
thinking
corn. Huh?
old corn on laying on the ground in the snow. But I mean, there's hunger and then there's desperate, you know.
Yeah.
And she was in a not just she was beyond hungry. She was desperate. Anyway, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Okay. Left from last year's harvest. She saw many Indians from her lurking place, and once a tall savage with an axe on his shoulder advanced directly towards the spot where she lay. But in the extremity of her fright, she murmured a prayer, on which she turned and changed his course. Or he changed his course. The fate that awaited her if she remained for a fugitive could not hope for mercy, and the scarcely less terrible dangers of the pitless wilderness between her and Canada filled her with despair, for she was half dead already with hunger and cold. She tied her girdle to the bough of a tree and hung herself from it by the neck. I tell you, this woman she was bad shape. She knew if she got captured that her fate was going to be more than terrible. You know, they were going to burn her, cut her to pieces, piece by piece, hack off one finger at a time or something, maybe cut her skin away as she yelled and screamed. They like to do that kind of stuff. And so she took the cord off of her a girdle there, you know, around her waist, holding her dress up, and she tied it to a bough of a tree and tried to kill herself.
Basically, she took off her belt.
Yeah, her belt. Okay. Yes, exactly. She repeated the attempt with the same results. Oh, the cord broke. She repeated the attempt with the same results, and then the thought came to her that God meant to save her life. The snow by this time had melted in the forest, and she began her journey for home with a few handfuls of corn as her only provision. Now remember, this is winter time. She directed her course by the sun, and for food dug roots, peeled the soft inner bark of trees, and sometimes caught tortoises in the muddy brooks. She had the good fortune to find a hatchet in a deserted camp, and with it made one of those wooden implements which the Indians use for kindling fire by friction. You know what that is, right?
Yep. A bow or, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
And can you imagine? She was catching tortoises in the mud and without a fire. That was before she got the things. Okay. Isn't it amazing how one little tool like a hatchet can make the difference between life and death?
Yep.
This saved her from the worst suffering, for she had no covering. Now, this is the worst part. She had no covering but a thin tunic. Remember how I showed you that woman? And she just was wearing that tunic thing? Yeah. She had no covering but a thin tunic, which left her legs and arms bare and exposed. Her at night to the tortures of cold. So she's got no blanket. She's got no robe. She's got nothing to cover her but this little tunic dress that she's wearing that's short sleeved and, you know, it's cut off at the knees. Now, I mean, and I'm sure she didn't have a bra and underwear on under that. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. She was basically in a sundress.
Yeah. And yet
in
she's
today's
out.
standards, she was in a sundress.
Yeah, exactly. And she's
in the
out
winter time.
in the winter. Yeah, in the snow and the cold at night. And it gets cold. And you're talking New York, man. It gets cold up there. Okay. The tortures of cold at night. She built her fire in some deep nook of the forest, warmed herself, cooked what food she had found, told her rosary. Now remember, she's a Christian believing woman.
That's Catholic.
Yes. Told her rosary or on her fingers and slept till daylight, when she always threw water on the embers, lest the rising smoke should attract attention. Once she discovered a party of Iroquois hunters, but she lay concealed, and they passed without seeing her. She followed their trail back and found that their bark canoe, which had lay hidden near the bank of the river. Remember, I was telling you about the canoe thing earlier, hidden by the bank of the river. It was too large for her to use, but as she was a practiced canoe maker, just my luck, I'm a practiced canoe. I can make a canoe, right? Who thinks of this stuff? She reduced it to a convenient size. So she took the canoe. This is the way I understand. She took the canoe apart and made it smaller. I didn't even know you could do that. But
well, remember that one that you saw?
Yeah.
Didn't you? Right. You took a picture of that. And so imagine that.
That's a pretty big one.
Right. So what I think she did was probably shortened it. So she left one end okay, and then she probably squeezed, cut it in half or whatever, and just made it so she could move it around. Instead of 16 foot, she made it a 10-footer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Roughly speaking.
She embarked in it and descended into the stream. At length, she reached the St. Lawrence and paddled with the current towards Montreal. On islands and rocky shores, she found eggs of the waterfowl in abundance, and she speared fish with a sharpened pole hardened at the point with fire. Remember, wood gets really hard when you burn it at the end. Once it makes it into like a charcoaly, it gets really, really hard. It really does. She even killed deer by driving them into the water, chasing them in her canoe, and striking them on the head with her hatchet. See what I mean about the hatchet being so important? The things that you can do with a weapon of some sort, She when she landed at Montreal, her canoe had still a good store of eggs and dried venison. Her journey from Onaga had occupied about 2 months under hardships which no woman but a squaw could have survived. Escapes not less remarkable of several other women are chronicled in the records of this year, and one of them, with a notable feat of arms which attended it, calls for a brief notice. Anyway, I'm going to stop there, but I just thought that was a heck of a story, and that it is so impressive that people could do that. Do you think people could get to that point where she's out there for 2 months with nothing but a tunic, her little sundress, and a hatchet, a half a canoe, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, 2 months trying to get home, walking, going in the, so many things could happen
and
to
hiding.
You. Yeah, and hiding, not being captured.
It's interesting. I've been down in the swamp a lot. I spent 3 days in the swamp one time with, nothing to eat and very little water. And it's interesting how the survival mode kicks in. And you'll put your face down in a mud puddle if you're thirsty enough. And when you say, well, I would never do that, be careful what you say. She was so desperate that she was taking old corn off the ground and eating it. Imagine how hard that would be. And the best you could do would be to just put it in your mouth and hope to God that it would soften up enough that when you swallowed it would do you some good, Anyway, but remember though that pioneers, the Davy Crockett type thing, people knew how to do everything. They had to. Women knew how to dress a deer. Men knew how to cook, you know, and they all knew how to dry meat. They all knew how to do this, and they all knew how to build a hut. They all, I mean, because they had to survive. And but we these days don't have that kind of issue.
Oh, I know.
Survival is different. You know, so so people don't learn those things that were common. You know, a 10-year-old boy knew how to do all kinds of stuff because he
Yeah.
was there helping ma and pa, and he worked around the ranch. He knew how to ride a horse. He knew how to shoot a gun. And you say a 10-year-old these days is, playing video games. It's not the same.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's yeah, kids nowadays play video games. Back then, they were the video game. Let's go out in the
Yeah.
woods and survive for a week with the bears and the critters and the other Indians out there, and hope we don't get scalped or killed or burned at the stake. I mean, come on, really? Holy cow!
I don't know. Back when I was in high school, and freshman year, sophomore year, we had a list of books that we could choose from, but we had to read at least 3 books during the summer. And I remember one of them was Old Yeller. Now they made it a movie, but if you've never read the book Old Yeller, about this young boy back in the pioneer days, and he had this dog, but at the same time he had this young deer that he was taking care of, and the young deer got in their corn, and and trying to be kind, the deer actually, almost put him into starvation. And then Old Yeller got rabies, and it just, but that was life and times back then. And so, Pete, if you haven't read the book or watched the movie, you should. The book was a lot. The movie was okay, but the book gets you into the characters more than the movie could. But
Yeah,
to
well,
understand what mothers and fathers, just it's a read the book. Take the
well, and
time.
that,
It's not too
well, and
long.
that,
I can't remember who wrote it, but anyway.
and that's the thing, those. Uh, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, these
But
people
people,
like this, they had conviction to stay alive. I mean, like I said, today, even if you were in a predicament, most people I don't think could do half of what that woman did. Find roots to eat. Eat corn laying on the ground for a long time, last year's corn, and running around a sundress at night, like that. Most women would freeze to death nowadays. They would holler and scream, and she couldn't say anything. If she screamed or yelled, they would have found her, and she would have get killed.
or if she cried out in pain. But one of the things, with a swamp in my backyard and having, played survival nut a lot of my life, just to, just to say, okay, I've been outside when it was really cold, and I've been stranded hitchhiking one time in Florida, and it got really cold, and I got hypothermia. And that's when you start shivering and you can't stop, you're in hypothermia. And so what do? You find cover. So this young lady knew how to use the landscape for cover. She might have found a stump or an overhang or something to get up underneath. She probably was laying close to the ground because, that you can warm up the ground with your body, and it will kind of, not a whole lot, but, but she knew how to survive. And back in those days, they they took the simplest of things and to help them survive. She probably covered herself with leaves and things, to help keep her warm which is one thing that I've done before. And you'd be surprised when you get up enough leaves and crawl up underneath them, you can get pretty warm. So, but who thinks of leaves as a way to stay warm when you've only got a, you know, a sundress on? So, but anyway, she was very smart, and but folks back in those days knew those kinds of things because
Yep.
from traveling from one town to another, there were times when a storm had come up, and they all they had was what they had on their back, you know, and maybe a walking stick, and you know, maybe a knife if they were prepared at all, or maybe a hatchet. But you know, if they got caught on the trail from, you know, going from one town to another, they had to make do. So they knew and possessed um, skills to survive, where
Yes,
folks
they did.
nowadays wouldn't have a clue on what to do. And
No,
that
they.
really is a shame. But we don't face the same kind of things that they did back then. So,
Well, and that's true. Scotty Boy says we call it survive, they call it living, and
yep,
I think kind of right.
yep.
But you know, and that's the thing. Like I said, you know, I think people, and they always say that too. You know, people have gotten too comfortable. I mean, think of what a lot of people would do with the water. The hot water. Hot water don't work. You know, they go crazy. All I got is hot water. Or maybe the water stops or the electricity goes out. Oh my gosh, you know, what are we gonna do? The power's out. Oh man.
Oh
You
my
know.
God, the dishwasher doesn't work. What's
Yes.
wrong
Yes.
with your hands and a dish rag? You know, oh my God, the dishwasher doesn't work. So wash them by hand. What? Oh my God. Holy crap.
Well, and that's the thing. Like right now, you're about to get hit by the hurricane,
Yep,
right?
it's headed right our way. Yep, where's
And
my phone at?
you know
Hang on.
what happened? Okay, you know, just for shits and giggles, I want to ask what happens there when there's a hurricane? People run to the stores, they freak out. What's going on?
Oh, our local WCTV from Tallahassee, Mike McCall was saying, you know, be ready for your lights to be out for 3 days. It doesn't
Oh.
mean they will, but somebody somewhere, because of we've had hurricanes come through here before, and some of them were devastating. You know, when Michael came through, what, 7 or 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it smacked the crap out of us here. You know, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
other folks too. But you know, and I'm sitting here, I'm sitting here with my cell phone. You can't see that. There's the storm right there, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
south of us, literally. I mean, there's rain. Let's see, south. It's just right over there. I mean, literally within minutes. Now it's just a rain band, and I don't hear any wind outside howling yet, but you should see the storm that you know that's fixing to hit the coast.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's headed right our way.
Yep, yep, I'm sure it is. Do people run to the stores and empty them out before this happens?
Only people who aren't prepared.
Ah.
I mean, for folks like myself, you know, I buy up enough stuff for at least a week, sometimes 10 days. I got enough dog food in there, you know, if anything happens, you know, and like what happened during Michael, you know, the stores weren't open for at least a week in some areas. So I got enough dog food to, you know, keep up with Duggar. Where a lot of people ran out of dog food in 2 or 3 days because they live on a short-term basis. And I've learned, you know, I've been, you know, doing this 10-day thing for a while. So I can go to the store and pick up something, but basically I got stuff that's going to last a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have enough provisions to get by for at least 10 days, and I could stretch it out if I needed to. I've got dried beans and things like that in case it really gets long term. But there, we know around here that 3 days is not uncommon to be out of electricity. So
Mm-hmm.
prepare.
Yep. Okay. Well, what do we got for a story tonight? Oh, I was going to put this one up here too. And this is kind of good, but I don't know if I got the thing here. Well, yeah, I was going to do something on this. It was talking about nothing is more common among, oops, why did I do that? How did I manage that? Don't you hate it when you do that? Nothing is more
Yeah.
common among worldly minded and thoughtless men than to act as if the events of human life were an entire chance medley, produced by no particular known cause, governed by no conceivable law, and leading to no necessary result. With such an impression, it is to be expected that their lives of these persons should pass away uninfluenced by a uniform and efficient principle. With them, everything is unsettled and nothing settled. The mistake under which they labor affects even their phraseology and gives birth to terms which can have no place in the vocabulary of the Christian. From the sum total of their discourse, a hearer might infer that life's pursuits, like the thickets in a lottery wheel, are thrown together for the scramble of general speculation, to be paralleled out of the draw by adventurous competitors as fortune and fates main ordain. From the tenor of their communications, it would appear that they are perfectly independent, that each was the lord and master of everything around. The author gives and the giver of his own being and the kind of freehold interest in the human existence. I ain't going to go through the whole thing, but I thought that little bit was very interesting. And if any of you want this book here with this in it, let me know and I'll send it to you. But we're going to go to Seneca, Myths and Legends. I just thought that was so cool because it sounds like somebody's reading modern day, like, nothing is by chance. You know what I mean? How is that possible?
Because it's out there in the universe.
Well, that's right.
Really, it's out there in the universe, sort of like what we were talking before, and folks just, well, some folks pull it out, pull it out of the universe and into stories and lifetimes and whatever. So, but anyway.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah. Well, anyway, we got.
Hang on. While I was waiting, I'm pulling cards.
Okay. Well, like I said, this was a cool thing, but the world we live in is never quite as easy as we think. Nothing is by chance. Oh, I was just thinking about it.
It doesn't seem that way. I mean, there are things that happen along the way in our lifetimes. As most of you know, I've been out of the hospital about 2 weeks now. And, the life experiences, you think you've seen it all, you think you've done it all, and then you end up on the floor and end up in the hospital, and it teaches you all kinds of new lessons you had no idea you were going to learn. So, school is never over.
That is for certain.
No matter how old you are, the school's never over. I don't know how else to put it more simply. School is never over. So I got mine up. Are you ready there?
Yes, I can be ready in a second. I just put it to the side for the moment. And there we go. You're set whenever you're ready.
So Okay, so let me give a little preamble to this. Preamble? Okay. There are other stories, and there is one particular story that, and I want to say it's Rabbit, because Rabbit is always, sort of like Coyote. Rabbit's always a mischief maker and stuff in stories. So, and that in this story, he basically, it was the tortoise and the hare, right? But
Yeah.
told in a different way. So, at the end of this story, I'll tell you how it was similar. But this is a race between bear and turtle. Now, turtle is Hanoa, fox is Nogatawaga, and one name for big bear, big feet, is Dias Don Juanes. The Seneca story, a race between bear and turtle. An old man was going along slowly and surely by himself. After a while, he met a man who asked, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to the east to see what kind of people live there." "Ah, you'll never reach that place," said the stranger. "It is far off, and you are too old and fat for the road." Each man went his way. Soon the old man met another person, a lean man, who asked, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to the east to see how people live in that place." "You will never get there," said the lean man. "You are too fat. You can't travel." "How do you keep so fat?" "When I come to a village and find people lying around, I bore a hole in each one who pleases me and suck his fat out. That is my way of keeping fat." "I'll try it," said the young man. "I am too lean." Each went his own road. Soon the lean man came to an opening and at the edge of the wood saw an animal asleep. He crawled up carefully and began making a hole in its body near the tail. The animal sprang up, hit the man a heavy blow with its heels, and ran off. "The next time I see that fat old fellow, I'll pay him for fooling me," said the lean man. He went farther and met the old man a second time. "How do you keep so fat?" asked the lean man. "I do it by eating fish. I put my tail through a hole in the ice. A fish bites. I pull the fish out and eat it. That is how I keep fat." "I'll try that," thought the lean man. He traveled on till he came to a river and found a good place to fish. He made a hole in the ice, stuck his tail into the hole, and waited till his tail began to bite and ache. Then he tried to pull it out, but it was fast in the ice. He pulled it till at last he pulled his tail off and left it in the hole. He went his way, but through losing his tail, he was changed, was another kind of person. When summer came, he traveled around till he met the fat man. "Where are you going?" asked the lean man. "I'm going east to see who lives there." "You will never reach that place," said the lean man. "You are too fat. Come and run a race with me." "Very well, you may run on land. I'll run in the water. We'll start tomorrow." The fat man collected a number of his people and posted them in the river from the starting place to the end of the course. and told each man to stick out his head when the runner came almost up to him. The wager was heads. They started. The lean man ran with all his might, but every little while the fat man stuck his head out of the water. He was always in advance. When the lean man came to the goal, the fat man was there before him. "You've won the race," said the lean man. "Of course I have," said the fat man, and seizing the lean man by the neck, he dragged him to a rock and cut his head off. The fat man's friends came out of the river, looked at the dead runner, and said, "Oh, what a fool! Oh, what a fool!" The lean man was a bear. Before he lost his tail, he was a fox. Since that time, all bears have been stub-tailed. The fat man was a turtle. As all turtles look alike, he easily deceived the lean man. Now, as promised, in this story are two other stories that are like in the Cherokee and folks down south. And so there is a story about how Bear had a long bushy tail and that he was so proud of and boasting of his tail that all the other animals just couldn't put up with him. And so Coyote had showed Bear how to catch fish. So Coyote would go down to the river and use his tail to catch fish. And Bear said, "Let me try." So they sent him down to put his tail in the river, and he fell asleep, which is off what bears will do. So he fell asleep, and overnight the river froze over. And the next morning they woke the bear up, and and "Pull, Bear, pull your tail, pull," and that's when his tail ripped off because he was so boastful of his tail. And all bears have had a stubby tail since. Now that's part. So in this story, there's two stories in one. So where they teased Bear before because he was boastful, in this he was a fox. But anyway, so the second part of this story that is separated was that Rabbit wanted sort of the tortoise and the hare story, but there were four places along this track, and so Tortoise had placed one of his cousins or brothers, depending on the story, at these four locations. So every time Rabbit got to a point where he thought that he was winning, one of his cousins would step out and go, "Hi there," and start racing. And Rabbit would run to the next, checkpoint, and there'd be Rabbit. There'd be Turtle. How'd he get there? So same type of story, but mixed together. So anyway, so there are similar stories, not necessarily all in one like this one. So I hope that was a little informative for you. The next story is the grandmother and grandson. Now, over the last year and a half that Robert and I have been doing this, there are a lot of grandmother, grandson, grandfather, grandson stories. And there are a lot of similarities, and you're going to hear some in this one. And one of them is that, grandma or grandpa gives the grandson. Notice that there's in all the stories we've told, I don't believe there's ever been a granddaughter. I think one story maybe where there were two daughters, two sisters, but anyway. So it's usually the grandson, just saying, for whatever reason. And they always give him a bow or something, and he's always wondering where his parents are. So there is a commonality to these stories. So without further ado, the grandmother and the grandson. A grandmother and her grandson lived by themselves. After the boy had become quite large, his grandmother said, "Here are the bow and arrows that your uncle had. A witch killed him. You may take the bow and arrows and learn to use them." The next morning she said, "Go out and try to kill birds. Go as far as you like, but don't go north." She gave him a breakfast of parched corn. The boy went through the woods shooting birds, and by the middle of the day he thought, "I will go home now. My grandmother will be glad. I've killed so many birds." The old woman was glad. She dressed the birds, pounded corn, made hominy, and cooked the birds with the hominy. The next morning she gave the boy parched corn to eat, and as he was starting off, she cautioned him against going north. By the middle of the day, he had a larger string of birds than before. When he came home, his grandmother said, "Thank you, grandson. We are well off now. We will have plenty to eat." That night she talked to him, said, "My grandson, you must always hunt on the south side. Never go toward the north. You and I are the only persons left of our people. If you listen to my words and are obedient, we shall live." The next morning, after a breakfast of parched corn, the boy started off. He went farther than on the previous days and saw a different kind of game, such game as he had not seen before. While the birds were feeding, he got around in front of them, took aim, and hit one with an arrow. It ran a little way and fell dead. The rest escaped. He went up to the one he had killed, pulled out the arrow, tied a bark string around the bird, threw it over his shoulder, and started for home. When he stood at the door, he said to his grandmother, "I have larger game this time." The old woman was glad. She thanked the boy and said, "This is what we call a turkey." She dressed the bird and cooked part of it. They ate together, and the grandmother was well pleased. The next day, she sent the boy off again. He went a long way before he found game. About midday, he killed another turkey, tied bark around its body, swung it on his back, and went home thinking how far off game had gone. The next morning, the boy started away as usual. After he had gone a short distance, he began to wonder why his grandmother had forbidden him to go north when game was getting so scarce in the south. He decided to go north anyhow, and turning, he went in that direction. He saw a great many birds, but presently someone called out, "I've caught you, nephew." Looking up, the boy saw a man sitting on the top of several trees, the heads of which he had drawn together and tied in a bundle. There he sat, as in a nest. "Well, nephew," he said, "what would you do if it should rain fish spears?" "Oh, I should be thankful. We need some." The boy ran home as fast as he could, caught hold of his grandmother's hand, and said, "Grandmother, we must run and hide." "My grandson," said the old woman, "you have been in the north, where I told you not to go." He pulled her along by the arm, leaped into a spring, and went under the ground till they came to a rock. They sat under the rock and waited a long time. At last the boy said, "The storm is over. We will go home." When they reached home, their house was level with the ground. Oh, said the grandmother, this comes of your going north. Never mind, grandmother, answered the boy. I'll have a house soon. I'll have a house soon. He walked around a space as large as he wanted the house to be, then commanded a house to fill that space. Immediately, the house was there. He and his grandmother were more comfortable than before. In the morning, the boy ate his parched corn and went toward the south. Hunting took a circuit and went north, saying, yesterday I had fun with that man. I'll go and see what he will do today. The birds were so numerous that the boy was so occupied in shooting them that he forgot about the man till a voice called out, I've caught you, nephew. What would you do if I should send a shower of stones? Oh, I should be pleased. Grandmother often needs stones to pound her corn. The boy ran home, took his grandmother by the arm, and dragged her to the spring. Oh, grandson, said the old woman, you have been north again. And she began to cry. They went into the spring and under the rock till they came to the rock. Then they sat under the rock and waited. At last the boy said, the storm is over. We will go home. They found their house level with the ground. The boy encouraged his grandmother and made a new house. The next morning, after he had eaten parched corn, he started off toward the south, but soon turned north. Now, thought he, I won't hunt. I'll catch my uncle. He went some distance, called a mole, and said to it, I want, I want you to take me to that tree over there and go almost up to the man who sits on the nest. I will speak to him, and then you must bring me back to this place. The boy shook himself till he was as small as a flea. Then he hid in the mole's fur. When the mole was near enough, the boy called out, I've caught you, uncle. The man looked around but saw no one. Then the boy called out, what would you do, uncle, if a whirlwind should come? Oh, nephew, don't be so hard on me as that. I didn't talk that way when you asked me about spears and stones, said the boy. The mole went back to the place where he had found the boy. The boy regained his own size, ran home, caught hold of his grandmother, and drew her to the spring. They disappeared in the water, went underground, came to the rock, and sat under it till the boy stopped the whirlwind. When they came out of the spring, they found the trees torn up by the roots and their house level with the ground. But right away, the boy built a house by walking around a space and commanding it to be there. The next morning, he started off south, but when out of sight of the house, he turned and went north to see what had become of his uncle. All the trees were torn up by the roots, and he thought, my uncle must be dead and buried under the trees. I can hunt in safety now. He shot a great many partridges and went home. The old woman was glad to have her grandson come quietly bringing game. He said, Grandmother, I've destroyed my uncle. He is no longer on the trees. Well, said the grandmother, you needn't think he was alone in the world. His brother lives in a house farther on. The next morning, the boy ate his parched corn and started off, determined to find his other uncle. He came to the place where the three trees were, found them uprooted, and his uncle dead. Then he held on his way till he came to an opening and saw a house with smoke rising through the smoke hole. I'll go there and look in, thought he. That must be the place where my uncle lives. He went to the house, opened the door, looked in, and said to an old man sitting there, "Well, uncle, I've come to visit you." "Come in, my nephew," said the old man. "I have a rule which all follow who come here. Everyone who visits me must run with me across this field and back. We bet our heads on the race." "If that is your rule, we will run," said the boy. They went outside. "We will run to that post over there at the end of the opening. If I get back and cross this line first, I'll cut your head off. If you cross first, you cut off mine." They stood side by side. The old man called, "Now!" Off they started and ran to the post. When halfway back to the line, the boy fell. A sharpened deer horn had stuck into his foot. He sat down, pulled out the horn, and threw it far ahead. It came to the ground right in front of the old man. He had gone on a good distance while the boy was sitting down. Now he ran on to the deer horn. He fell, and while he was pulling the horn out of his foot, the boy ran ahead, crossed the line, and called out, "Uncle, I have won the race." The old man disputed. When that was no use, he begged for another smoke. But the nephew refused, took a sharp flint knife from his pocket, seized his uncle by the hair, and cut off his head. Then he pulled the body into the house and burned the house. The old man's head burst out, and out flew owls. The boy went home and told his grandmother what he had done, and she said, "You have a third uncle further on. He too has great witchcraft." The next morning, the boy started off to visit the third uncle. He passed the uprooted trees and the burned house and went some distance through a forest. When he came to the edge of the forest, he saw a large opening and a house at the other end of it, and he said to himself, "That must be the house of my third uncle." He went on till he came to the house. Going in, he said to an old man who was sitting there, "Uncle, I have come to visit you." "Oh, nephew, I am glad you have come," said the old man. "I have a game to play. Everyone who comes here plays with me. We bet heads." "What is the game?" "We hide here in this room. I will hide, and if you don't find me every time till midday, you are beaten, and I'll cut off your head. If you find me every time, you win and will cut off my head." "Very well," said the nephew. "Now," said the old man, "you must lie down on the ground, and I'll cover you up with an elk skin. When I'm ready, I'll let you know." The boy lay down and was covered up with the elk skin. As soon as the man covered his nephew, the boy turned into a wood tick and got onto his uncle's neck. And when the old man called out, "Ready," the tick called out, "I found you, uncle." The old man thought the voice came from behind him. He hit again, and again the tick called out, "I found you, uncle." He looked everywhere but couldn't see his nephew. Again he hid, for he had the right to keep on hiding till midday. The old man thought the boy was still under the elk skin, and he wondered how he could find him. He continued to hide, but was always found. Every little while, the old man ran out to look at the sun and then hurried back into the house to hide. At last, he thought, I'll hide outside. But the boy called out, That won't do, my uncle. You said we must hide in the house. It was almost midday. The old man was frightened. He ran out, got a long pole, and punched the sun off towards the east. Then he ran in and hid. The boy called out, I found you, uncle. Again, the sun was almost overhead. The old man ran out, took his long pole, and pushed it towards the east, and again hid, but was found. At last, the sun was straight overhead, and the boy called out, I found you, uncle. The game is mine. The old man begged for one more smoke, but the nephew wouldn't let him have it. He cut off his head, dragged him into the house, and set fire to the house. The head burst, and out of it flew owls. The boy went home and told his grandmother what he had done. She said, You have a fourth uncle, worse than all the others, and I advise you not to go near him. Harm will come to you if you do. The next morning, the boy went toward the south, then made a circuit toward the north. He passed the places he had destroyed and came to an opening with a house in the center. In the house was a very old man. The boy said to him, Uncle, I have come to visit you. Very well, said the old man. Come in and sit down. I have a game that I play with all those who come to visit me. I play dice. We each have one throw, and we bet our heads on it. I'll play with you, said the boy. But first, I'll go to the river. On the river, there was a flock of ducks. The boy called to the ducks. They came to the bank, and he said to them, I have to play a game, and I want your help. I want 6 right eyes. I'll bring them back soon. They agreed, and he took the right eye from 6 of the ducks and said to the eyes, When the old man plays, some of you must drop into the bowl with your sight down. But when I play, you must drop in looking up. When the boy went back to the house, he said to the old man, We will play with my dice. They spread a deer's skin on the ground and put the bowl on it. The old man wanted to use his own dice, but the boy wouldn't let him. When the eyes were in the bowl, he asked his uncle to take the first throw. The old man didn't want to play first, but after disputing some time, he took up the bowl and shook it. The eyes went up slowly to the top of the smoke hole as ducks quacking, and came back into the bowl as dice, some right side up and others wrong. The boy shook the bowl. The dice flew up as ducks. Quacking loudly, they went out at the smoke hole and disappeared in the clouds. The old man kept saying, No count, no count. The boy said, Count 5, count 5. By and by, they heard the ducks coming in the distance, and soon they dropped into the bowl as dice, and all were right side up. I won the game, cried the boy. The uncle begged to be allowed one smoke, but the nephew refused, cut off his head with a flint knife, and set fire to the house. The boy took 6 eyes, went back to the river, and called the ducks. They came. He moistened the eyes with saliva and put each eye in its own place. Then he thanked the ducks and set them free. When he reached home and told his grandmother what he had done, she said, "Now you can hunt wherever you like. There was no one to harm you." The boy was now a man. He could kill deer, bear, and other game, but he had to go so far that he always came home late at night. He didn't like this, and one day said to his grandmother, "I am tired of going so far to hunt. I have power to call game to the house. I will sing, and the game will come." He went to a white ash tree and brought home wood to make arrows, and by night he had a great many arrows. The next morning he brought a deer skin. The old woman sat down. He covered her with the skin and said, "You must not look out. If you do, I shall leave here never to come back." He placed the bundle of arrows on the ground outside and began to sing. "Come to me, deer. Come to me, elks. Come to me, bears. Come to me, coons." Soon there was a great noise in the forest. Animals were coming from every side. When they were near enough, the young man began to shoot. Bears, coons, and hedgehogs were climbing over the house. The old grandmother was frightened at the noise. She took the deerskin off from her head and looked up through the smoke hole to see what the trouble was. That instant, a white deer sprang over the others, seized the young man with his horns, and ran off through the woods. All the animals followed. The man was still singing. The old woman opened the door and saw all the animals that had been killed, but her grandson was nowhere to be seen. Then she remembered his words. While the white deer was rushing through the woods, a pack of wolves came upon its track, overtook it, and killed both the deer and the man. That afternoon, the clouds in the west were very red. The grandmother thought, "That is a bad sign. My grandson is in trouble." This was the very time the young man was killed. The next morning, the old woman followed the tracks of the game, hoping to find her grandson. The animals had beaten a broad trail through the woods. She followed the trail till evening. About the time she saw the red clouds the day before, she came upon the spot where her grandson and the deer were killed. She found pieces of bloody buckskin, but not a bone or a bit of her grandson's body. Then the old grandmother gave him up and started for home, crying as she went. The end.
Ah, that was good.
So he cleared the woods so he could go hunting. And then his grandma, stuck her head up and kind of sort of ruined what he was, what he was working on. So she loved him, but fear made her, stick her head out from under the deer skin. So just interesting. Interesting story, eh?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
A lot of killing and a lot of heads cutting off.
There's all in these books. There's always a lot of killing. I swear, I can't get away from it.
You know, you got to kill your uncle. You got to kill your, you know, the old man, the old woman, you know. The one recently was don't go to the north. There were witches there, and he had to go and kill all the witches and cut their heads off. Remember that one?
Yep.
So there are a lot of
Yes.
similarities, and you know they never tell you why the head's got to be cut off. Well, it's a game. We're going to throw dice, okay, or we're going to run, okay. Whatever the game is, the end result is somebody gets their head cut off. You know, what, you can't start with a toe or a finger, you know?
I know.
So, how about that?
Ah, yes. Oh, let's see.
So, yes, I have pulled cards for those of you who may be thinking. And something that is synchronicity for me. So I'm going to bring it to you, to y'all. Looking out my window right here, there many a times through the day, dragonflies will alight over here just outside the window. And just outside the window is also where I feed the cats. And there is a wire from the house to the shed, and it's speaker wire. But anyway, I use it for a clothesline and have for years. But anyway, so the dragonflies like to sit on that clothesline, which is outside this window. So I was outside yesterday, and one was just like right in my face, like, "Hi, how you doing?" You know, and a beautiful dragonfly. So, having had, and you know, they were out there earlier today, but I think they know that a hurricane's coming, but because they weren't out today like they were yesterday. Anyway, so I grab the cards and I have them in a plastic bag so it keeps them safe. And this card falls out and it's Dragonfly. Could have been any other card out of the 40 cards or so that's in here. No, Dragonfly. So I had to bring it out, and it's upside down. So we've had Dragonfly before. So 27. Oh, that's also 72 in Illusion. So I'm going to show you the other two cards that just seem to have to come out. And we haven't had Frog in a while, but Frog is here and upside down, and it's number 38. So I don't know which card to read first. So I'm going to go with Frog, which usually means cleansing. Let me see. Let me go to 38. I'm coming. Yeah, cleansing. So this card's upside down. So sing, frog, sing, call the rains. Well, guess what's coming?
Rain.
Quench the dryness, cleanse the earth, then fill me up again. And the backyard's really dry, so it could use it. Frog sings the songs that bring the rain and make the road, the dirt road, more bearable. Frog medicine is akin to water energy, and the east is on the medicine wheel. Frog teaches us to honor our tears, but for they cleanse the soul. All water rights belong to Frog, including all initiations by water. Now, I'm just curious as I'm reading this, you know, pull the Frog card, and there's a bunch of water headed towards us. I mean, just hours away for us. And just curiosity, Water prepares and cleanses the body for sacred ceremony. So is this hurricane like sacred ceremony, a cleansing? Just wondering. It
Could
is
be.
the element we understand best in the womb. Frog, like ourselves, is the pollywog in the fetal waters and only learns to hop after it experiences the world of fluidity. I love that line right there. That after it experiences the world of fluidity. And I was talking with Elderberry the other day about how down in the woods I've got my furthest point. I've got a 6 foot um, uh, 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 thing that I built, platform. And I've been down there before when water was halfway up this platform. So there was no dry land in either direction for at least a half a mile. And there was something about the fluidity, the water rushing and being in the middle of it all. So, anyway, Frog is upside down. Let me get a drink real quick. I've been doing a lot of talking. The contrary frog slipped in the mud and is lying on his back, unable to right itself. Get ready for more mud in your eye. The contrary position of frog can denote an unwillingness on your part to wipe the mire out of your eye, out of your life. Mud can turn from mire to bog to quicksand if you don't recognize its effect on your present situation. Is someone draining your energy? Are you allowing yourself to ride down the tubes with them? Have you tried to settle someone else's quarrel and gotten in the line of fire? Stop it if you have. Recognize what it is that is mucking up the lily pond. Swim with frog. Frog's bug eyes see it all. Dive deeply and then hop to the next lily pad to catch the sun. In this way, you may see exactly what has been draining your energy. Negativity is drawn to you when you refuse to give yourself the time and space needed to assume a new viewpoint. Let me read that to you again. Negativity is drawn to you when you refuse to give yourself the time and space needed to assume a new viewpoint. If you're sitting in the same old chair thinking the same old thing no, you got to give yourself the time to move to another location, go outside, go do something. Frog in the contrary position is an omen that you are courting disaster if you don't stop and smell the lilies, eat some flies, and bask in the sun and rivet till the rain comes to refill your spirit. Now, we got a lot of rain coming, so hopefully that can be cleansing to folks. Now, the other card is possum. Whoops. In upright position. And possum is up, playing possum is you're faking it. So it's number 23. I'll be right there. So with the frog card, only you can determine whether or not you're stuck in the mud. But one of the things you can ask the creator and you can ask the universe, hey, am I stuck in the mud? I mean, and you got to be honest and well, I'm just sitting here. Yeah, but are you stuck? And you got to be honest. So, opossum number 23 is diversion. Opossum, roll over. Are you really dead? Or just playing possum? Was it something that I said? Opossum's greatest form of protection is to play dead. And having many possums in my chicken house before, they do it really good. In doing this, a possum confuses many a predator into believing that the game is over. Oftentimes, the confused rival walks away or looks the other direction, and then possum's gone. Possum medicine uses a great deal of strategy. If all else fails, opossum plays dead. It has the ability to fight with its claws and teeth, but it really uses this form of protection. Instead, the supreme strategy of diversion is constantly employed when things get a little too hard to handle. Opossum has developed an act that would achieve an Academy Award. If opossum is turned up in your cards, you're being asked to use strategy. Now, Frog says to jump to another lily pad. Well, and Possum is telling you, guess what? Use strategy. And so you need another viewpoint and use strategy when doing so. Interesting. These things are always related. Rely upon your instincts for the best way out of a tight corner. If you have to pretend to be apathetic or unafraid, do it. Oftentimes, if you refuse to struggle or show that hurtful words bother you, your taunter will see no further fun in the game. Warriors have used possum medicine for centuries, playing dead when the enemy nears and outnumbers them. Then, in a flash, when the enemy is least expecting, they jump up. Possum may be relaying to you that you are to expect the unexpected and to be clever in achieving your victory, whatever that victory may be. This could be a victory over a bothersome salesman or a nosy neighbor, or it could be a conflict within you. You're trying to overcome something. Um, in essence, Possum is beckoning you to use your brain, your sense of drama and surprise, to leap over some barrier in your progress. So leap, frog, lily pad, and use strategy. Okie dokie. And dragonfly is the illusion. Number 27. And the fact, I mean, I always have dragonflies, but for that dragonfly to like talk to me yesterday and to, the card just said, here I am. Dragonfly breaks illusions, brings visions of power. No need to prove it because now is the hour. Know it, believe it. Great Spirit intercedes, feeding you and blessing you and filling all your needs. Dragonfly medicine is of the dream time and the illusionary facade we accept as physical reality. You know that some legends say the dragonfly was once the dragon, and then it tried to prove itself to Coyote, and then stayed a dragonfly. Dragonfly is the essence of the winds of change, the messages of wisdom and enlightenment. Okay, so here we are with Frog, who says, go to another lily pad to get another point of view. Possum says to use strategy in doing so. And Dragonfly is saying that the essence of the winds of change, the messages of wisdom and enlightenment, and the communication from the elemental world. So, frog, possum, elemental world. So, but it is upside down. So, the contrary is, are you trying to prove something to yourself or somebody else that you have power? Are you caught in an illusion that weakens your true feelings or minimizes your abilities? If so, you may have contracted the dragonfly dive bombing. Look within and feel the sense of self energy within yourself. Notice if it's ebbing. Now, Frog says, you might need to, swim underwater and go see it. So here is the contrary dragonfly saying the same thing. Notice if your energy is ebbing and find that point in time when you were deluded into believing you could be happier because somebody told you so. Misery is a prime clue that you lost your will and personal validity when you bought into somebody else's idea that you should be happy. The illusion was that you would be happier if you did it their way. Follow Dragonfly to the place inside your body where magic is still alive and drink deeply of its power. So, Frog and Possum, you need a diversion. Go inside with Frog to that other lily pad. This strength belongs to you. It is the power of becoming the illusion. This ability is ever changing and contains within it the knowledge that you are creating it all. This ability is ever changing and contains within it the knowledge that you are creating it all. So, wow, those three went together well, in my humble opinion. I hope you all got that message. For
Yep.
those, especially for those folks who may really needed to hear that message. Okie doke, how are we doing for time? Well, 2 hours and
Yeah,
4 minutes.
We're
Not
right on time. We're doing good.
Not too bad,
Nope, not too bad at all.
especially considering that second story was a lot longer than I anticipated. So, but it was still a good story. I liked reading it. Can you tell that I enjoy reading the stories?
Yes, I can. I hope to be as good as you someday.
I try to bring life to the stories, in my readings of them.
You do. I appreciate that. I don't know. My readings aren't quite as elaborately good as yours are. That's for sure. I try though. Practice.
Well, as you know, and it's all about inflection, where to put the high note, when to put the low note, when to kind of, so, and there are some people I can't listen to because their inflections are horrible. Oh my God, it's painful to listen to.
Are you talking about me? Oh my gosh.
No. But as just a general note that to improve, that's where you improve.
Yeah.
You improve through your inflection and by not going too fast,
Yeah, I tend to go fast sometimes.
You have a tendency. You're so excited.
Yes.
You're like you just and you're like no. You got to pace yourself.
I've been trying to slow down.
Yeah, you've been doing great. But in the excitement, sometimes you're like, and you back up. You're doing great.
Thank you. Anyway, let's cut this off. I've been up for a long time. It's been a long day. I was out all night long, got like 3 hours of sleep. And it was a late night. I no more got home last night. It's a good thing I had taped shows because if I didn't, I no more got home, got in the door, packed my lunch, threw it in the truck, and away I went.
Wow.
I was out till I didn't get home till 2:30 last night.
Wow.
But anyhow, I got
time
home.
to put you to bed.
Yeah, I know. I got home, got to bed, then I got up at 5. But yeah, but it's been a great night. I wouldn't trade this for anything. But I hope my stuff made sense. And like it says, I was pretty infatuated with that story of the cruelty. I mean, I hate to bring cruel stories to the everything, but that's just what there was. It's just how it was, man. I think those were great days to live in, but they were also dangerous days.
Yeah, and you talk about cruelty. I was watching something the other day, and it was about how the Germans, when they took over France, they just kind of rolled on in, and there are a few guys, folks who were killed in the bombing. But as the Americans came back across France, the Germans were cruel. Oh my God, some of the things that they did, gassing people and killing folks and just mowing them down just left and right, just because they wanted to. They were like, no, we hate you people, and that's not discussing the concentration camps and all the horrors there. But I mean, you're running over people with tanks and just oh my God. And not bad enough, they back up and made sure you were part of the dirt. Just horrendous. Rape the women and then hang them in the from the street lamps and stuff. Look at these whores, and they used them as whores and then hung them up. Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, my point in saying that is that we called the Native Americans savages, and well, they maybe they should have morally known better, but the Germans should have known morally better, and they were worse than the savages. So
yeah,
or as bad as. But anyway, hopefully mankind will learn at some point. We'll keep praying for that, and I continue to pray that each and every day, each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings from the universe. And thank you, Robert, for another good night.
Absolutely. And I hope you make it through the hurricane with no troubles.
Yeah, it's a coming.
That's right. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. Scotty Boy, Elderberry, Susie Q, Pa, Joe, B. Freeman. Don't forget to send me an email saying that, send me an email. My link is in the description below, and I'll send you this book, the Seneca book. Aaron's Energy was in the house tonight. Susie Q. I don't know who else was listening, but Travis Brick was in the house. Chloe, thank you, Chloe. Amber Dawn Rising. And she puts on a great show. Go over there and subscribe to her channel. Anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. And we will be back Saturday with a special this Saturday night on Hawaii and the Maui thing. And it's going to be interesting, people. If everybody is jumping on board this, we got the inside scoop. Maybe cross your fingers from a real person who lives there. And so be like one of those conspiracy theorist people, only we're going to do some good work and some helping out all at the same time. So with that, everybody, go do something nice for your neighbor and do something nice for yourself. Have a great week coming up, because pretty soon it's going to be Labor Day, and then the summer will be over. So be safe, and remember to be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers. Hunker down.